What's going on, guys? The finale of Moon Knight has dropped on Disney Plus, and we're gonna break down all of the episode. We're gonna explain the ending. We're gonna throw in some Easter eggs here and do it all at the same time. Thanks for watching. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel, and then share this thing all across the multiverse. Let's get right to it. I really liked this episode. There were some pacing issues at the end, but the more I've thought about it, I kind of rewatched some pieces. I think I have some explanations for some of that. We're going to explain that at the end. But true to my predictions, we ended up starting this episode right where the last one left off. We find out a little bit of what happened when Mark dies, how Harrow gets Amit's Ushabti, Layla fighting her way out, and then Taweret having a conversation with Layla, stopping her from encountering Harrow as he's on his way to the Tomb of the Gods. And so you have those moments. I thought all of that was done really well, the build up to it and the battle that was coming. You know, I told a lot of you guys to temper your expectations, that a lot of these storylines could really be wrapped up rather simply, and I really think they were. There were some teases at the end. I kind of thought, after credit scene wise, there was a bunch of different ways they could go, so I kind of gave them a 33% possibility out of each of them, and one of them ended up being right. So the other ones didn't necessarily get teased, but it doesn't mean that they couldn't be showing up again in a Halloween special or some other episode somewhere with the way that they ended things up. And so, you know, getting to that, you have Taweret talking to Layla, and those elements coming together. You have Mark deciding on his own to go back for Steven, and I really thought that explanation and Mark making that decision in the Field of Reeds really played off episode 5 really well, because, you know, Mark spends that whole episode coming to terms with Steven and them figuring out each other, and so it made sense. It wasn't just this random noble act. It was Mark realizing that Steven wasn't a hindrance to his life and learning to accept him, and then Osiris stepping in to rescue Mark and bring him back, I thought was a really nice touch. I thought maybe that when the gods realized that Harrow was the one that had released Amit, they would go back and release Khonshu themselves. But having Layla follow along there to make that connection with Taweret was a really cool addition, and something that I really didn't see coming. I thought they would tease some powers of Layla, but bringing her in so quickly was a really nice twist, and it was a lot of fun to see. I think for all the superhero antics in this episode, which were many, and I think we got our fill of those things, Layla being added to that really upped the stakes, almost more than the giant god versions of these characters fighting in downtown Cairo. It was all really great, and I really think Layla stole the show in that regard, which is really hard to do because that Moon Knight character and that costume and the whole thing is just really great. It built so well as a series that when you got to those moments, I could have done without the Godzilla-looking elements and just watched the fight scenes and been glad to see those, especially with the characters that we've been rooting for this whole time. So I was a little unsure as to how Harrow confronting Osiris and those guys fighting happened, and the timeline is a little bit off because, you know, Layla's having this conversation with Taweret, where Taweret is talking to Layla and saying, I'm talking on behalf of Mark, and I'm trying to get you help. That happens early on, right about the same time that Harrow takes some of his first victims. So it kind of coincides, but with what you see in the afterlife in episode 5. But as Harrow confronts the Egyptian gods, I thought we were going to get to see some battle there. Part of me was kind of bummed about that, but I did like that there was an element that showed you how quickly Amit was able to take care of those guys and why they should have been fearful to begin with. And then Osiris having this moment with Layla where she kind of figures out from Osiris how to handle this, and either Osiris, after his avatar dies or somewhere in the middle, is able to help Steven and Mark get out of the afterlife and resurrect them, because that is part of his power as an Egyptian god. And the two of them getting to come back to life, and Khonshu recognizing that Mark is now available in the world, that he can recognize him, and he goes back and helps resurrect Mark so that he can take on Ammit. Those were all really good moments, and probably that 5 minutes there where Mark and Steven have this conversation, Khonshu is resurrected, and then Layla becomes the Scarlet Scarab. That 5 minutes in the middle of the episode was just steak after steak after steak, boom, 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 that really built to watching these guys fight. It was really awesome. And the line in that episode about where Mark is talking to Steven and he says, "You were the greatest superpower I ever had," was just excellent. For 5 episodes, 6 episodes, you've gotten this back and forth between the two, this bickering between the two, and Mark having this moment where he says, "You're part of me, and this is me accepting who I am," more so than him coming to terms with Khonshu, that this is who he is, and the superpowers don't make the man. Honestly, I thought they did that in 6 episodes almost as well or better than they did in 3 movies worth of Iron Man, where Iron Man and Tony Stark discovers, I'm the suit and I are one. You can't be Iron Man without Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is Iron Man. They did that even better, and it was really emotional. It was really great to see. And so you have all those moments. The big battle begins, and then there was a little Easter egg in there before Layla becomes Toweret's avatar, where Khonshu refers to Layla as a little bug. Almost, the little scarab references that she had been getting all series long, and Khonshu kind of makes light of it a little bit. He calls Mark and Steven a little worm. Just this aspect of Khonshu that looks down on humanity, that he's better than them, but he also interacts with them because they're a means to an end. Really almost fits the DID personality that Mark and Steven battled with for so long. The back and forths in this episode where Steven took over, Mark took over, Moon Knight was fighting, Mr. Knight was fighting, and those fight scenes, those elements were really cool to see them switch between, and they had built you up to that the whole time. And so when it happened, it was just a lot of fun to watch, and it made this, it was less of a battle where they're fighting against each other as they change, and more of this just co-worker type thing, where this symbiotic relationship that was really great to watch. Every time I saw stuff like that, no offense here, not meaning to be rude, it made the Venom movies seem that much worse because of how well the conversations went between these multiple characters inside this one person, and then thinking back to a movie like Venom and realizing how horribly they did that. This is how you do it. And it was done really well, and it was a lot of fun. The little scenes and the fight scenes in the city of Cairo between Moon Knight and Harrow, and just this, it felt a lot more raw. It didn't feel like this battle where everything was scripted. It was just this, how are we going to do this? And we're fighting, and these gods are fighting in the background, and the moral implications were being had in that regard between Ammit and Khonshu more so than Harrow and Moon Knight were fighting. It was kind of on an all fronts thing. And I can't remember if I put it in a prediction video or if it was just a conversation I had with some other fans and some friends watching the show, but I wondered if there would ever be a big battle between the gods, as opposed to just this smaller battle that would happen street level between Moon Knight and whoever else. And it was really cool to get both sides of that, to see both sides of those things. And I really love it. It's a fresh take in the MCU when they, I won't say take risks because they built the series up so well that it didn't feel risky, but you watch a giant alligator-looking creature fight a chicken skeleton in the middle of Cairo, and nobody bats an eye at it. They're like, yeah, this makes total sense. Those kind of things where Marvel and the writers and the directors have led you to that moment where it feels like a natural progression of the story is really awesome, really well done, and a whole lot of fun to watch. And it made for a lot bigger scene in a way that you you didn't need to up the stakes, but they did. And it made it a lot of fun to watch. And you got different sides of that story where Mark didn't have to be some kind of moral voice of reason in a way that didn't fit him. You know, he's fighting for humanity, but there's bigger stakes, and those stakes are between Khonshu and Ammit. And so those had nothing to do with them. Harrow and Mark and Moon Knight, that those characters had nothing really to do with these as far as the things that they're battling for. So you kind of had to have those different storylines and those different characters fighting each other. And rather than visualizing it or thinking it through morally, it was something you actually got to see. As a student of the Bible and a student of religion and theology in general, as a youth minister, it reminded me of different things that I would have read in Revelation, where you read a lot of the New Testament and you see these things going on within humanity, but then you get to Revelation and you see some of the spiritual warfare going on, where you see that there are bigger stakes than the things that we're feeling. It was really cool to see both of those things, and that's where my mind went. And I'm not saying that that's where your mind went, but I'm a Bible nerd in that regard, and so those are some of the things that I thought about when I saw those things. Some of the things I really liked during the fight scene, Layla getting to fight, especially with Taweret being this kind of goddess of protection and motherhood. There are elements where her fighting style was more protective and defensive. She was more there to protect other people than she was to fight and to destroy or do something like that. Right down to the moment where the little girl says, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she gets to say, "Yeah, I am." I think something like that is a way to keep her around. You know, they're giving a nod to inclusion, which I think is really great. But this moment where you kind of knew, like, okay, Layla may not give up this avatar role. She may hold on to it, which will be a really cool dynamic moving forward. So they planted some seeds for another season or for these characters to pop up in other places. The only part of the episode that was really difficult for me to wrap hold of, that I still need to watch a couple more times, but I have a working theory on, is, again, they flashed away from right at the apex of this fight where you really wanted to see, as a fan, everything come to fruition and see this battle happen. They flashed away from it in favor of a blackout by Mark and Steven, where they could bring in this Jake Lockley character. And so I was left unsatisfied with the way the battle ended in that regard, because you think all is lost, and then somehow they get out of it, but you don't get to see it. And you go from Moon Knight is just about to be destroyed, Mark and Steven are about to be defeated, to, 1 second later, now Harrow is dead or dying, and we're dragging him to a temple to do this spell to put Ammit into his body and trap him. It was just boom, boom, boom. It was way too quick, and all of a sudden, that's done. Ammit's gone. Within a couple of minutes, Ammit is gone, and you are teleported back to the psych ward, where Mark and Steven are aware of what's going on, almost like they were in the afterlife, like they died for a moment and decided to come back. I don't think it's that kind of moment. I think there's something else at play there. But what I do think happens somewhere around that, I haven't worked it backwards yet, but Khonshu frees Mark and Steven, hypothetically, from their role as Moon Knight. And they wake up in this psych ward talking to Harrow, and they elect to come back. They wake up in Steven's flat and are able to talk to each other, like we see early on, where they've kind of come to terms with each other. There are 2 goldfish in the fish tank. There's your other Easter egg, to kind of symbolize the fact that they coexist. The other implication there is that Mark and Steven have been together for a little while, that they didn't just wake up there day one. This has been a couple of days at least. But the tip-off for me was Mark and Steven are talking, they get ready to get out of bed, and they find that they are latched to the bed again. My theory is that if Mark and Steven were both aware of what was going on, and they knew each other and they trusted each other, they would have no reason to latch themselves to the bed, which says to me the Jake Lockley character that we see as that third personality, which we knew was coming from a lot of teases. Jake has been in control for a little while. He and Khonshu have been in control for at least a couple of days. They would be the source of the fish, because remember from episode 1, Steven realizes that the fish is different, and it's because Mark went on a 2 or 3 day trip. The fish died. Mark replaced the fish. So they wake up. There are 2 fish. Jake is the reason that the fish have been replaced. Jake is the reason that they are latched to the bed, because when Jake wakes up, he wants to know if Mark and Steven have gone anywhere. And so Mark and Steven wouldn't have had the need to latch themselves to the bed. Only that third personality would have. He's the only one with a reason to do that, to keep tabs on those 2, because he's been trapped for so long. And so if you extrapolate that back, Khonshu releases Mark and Steven. They black out. Rather than dying or something, they black out. And the whole psych ward scene is the day or two with Mark and Steven and Harrow, is the day or two where Jake is in control. And then when they wake up again, Jake has been in control for a few days. There's new fish in the fish tank. They've been latched to the bed. All of those things happen in their mind or someplace while Jake is in charge, and then that's where the episode ends. I think that's why the episode ends right there with, why is he still latched to the bed? That's supposed to be your question. They remind you of the fish. They show you that he's latched to the bed. Why is he still latched to the bed? You spent 5 episodes having him come to grips with the people that he was latching himself to the bed for. He comes to grips with Steven, Mark and Steven. He still ends up latched to the bed at the end of episode 6. And I think it's because of Jake, and everything we saw after Khonshu releases them is because of Jake. And Jake is now Khonshu's avatar, which means Mark and Steven are still connected to Khonshu in some way, which would make for a more brutal version of Moon Knight moving forward. I liked the choice in the after credits scene where Oscar Isaac or whoever chose to give Jake some kind of Spanish accent where he's also speaking Spanish to differentiate. The costume was also accurate from the Moon Knight run that a lot of this was based off of. That's another Easter egg for you. The license plate that says Spectre on the limo. So Jake is still a driver of some kind, but he is not a cab driver per se. He's driving a limo around, and Khonshu's in the back of it. I liked the costume that Khonshu is in that after credit scene. That is also a nod to some of those outfits that he wears in the comic run. And the name of the psychiatric hospital, which is different than Mark and Steven's afterlife manifestation, which was Putnam Medical Center. This is actually called Sienkiewicz Medical Hospital, Mental Hospital, and that is a nod to a Marvel writer and artist within the Marvel comic universe. And so that was a really cool Easter egg as well. And that after credit scene was really great. I really liked that a lot. Of all the scenes that I thought we needed to see, Werewolf by Night, maybe Steven not coming back, but him being the last tease to say, hey, Steven's still in there somewhere. I thought leaving Jake Lockley out of the big fight, even though I wanted to see what happened to Harrow, I liked the fact that they still brought him in and they used him as a tease for the future. You could almost use Jake as a villain in another episode, him and Khonshu versus Mark and Steven, and trying to reconcile those styles where Khonshu really lends himself more to Jake's brutality, and Mark and Steven have kind of gotten on the same page about, look, we don't want to be killers, but we do agree with your sense of justice. So a lot of those elements are really great. Overall, and I will talk about this with my buddy, The Astounding Cameron, on Sunday, and there'll be a video released about the whole series on his channel and on my channel. I'm going to give you a sneak peek. I think this series is probably the best Disney Plus series that they have made. With a few of those pacing issues in this finale, it really had a good payoff, and the episode was really great, and there was a lot more positive elements than negative elements in that. The series as a whole was way better done than Loki. There was a lot of really cool things in Loki, and there were some things that really lent themselves to some fan service in Loki. They did some good world building, and there were some things in there that were very good just because it was Tom Hiddleston and it was a character we had been familiar with. But as far as a show and world building and new character and storyline and the whole thing, my favorite Disney Plus series so far, with Loki a close second. But talk more about that later in a breakdown video, a scorecard video, where we talk about all of our different predictions, how close we got, how many predictions we got right. There's a lot of things that I had laid the groundwork for early on in my predictions. Say, pay attention to these things, don't forget these things. And they did pay off in episodes 5 and 6, and a lot of our predictions were spot on. I think in this one, with the exception of the fact that I gave 3 different possibilities for after credit scenes, we went 5 for 7 on those last predictions, and so the last 2 prediction episodes were spot on. And a lot of the payoffs that I had been trying to remind you guys of, which probably came off as a little bit of a cop-out that, oh, you just pay attention, look for the Easter eggs. No, the way they designed this series and the way that they threw things into the episode were really callbacks to things, and you needed to pay attention to them. And so it makes for a lot of good rewatchability. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Add your comments below. Shout out to one of our subscribers and commenters, Love Life. He made a comment a couple of episodes ago where he predicted that Layla would get superpowers, and I thought about that guy whenever Layla gets her powers and becomes an avatar. I thought, man, that guy was spot on. So shout out to you. Awesome job. That was really, really cool. Tell us what you guys think in the comments. We'll give you guys a shout out too. I love interacting with you guys in the comments. Check out some of our other videos. We got a whole lot of other things that you can sink your teeth into. And as always, when the next one drops, guys, we'll see you right back here. Later.